of Shakuntala. So in the previous few classes, what we have been discussing is the themes that are there in the play, the introduction for the play that is given in the Penguin Classic Edition that discusses about the play of Kalidasa, the works of Kalidasa, the reference to Ujjaini, the features of Ujjaini, and and the name of the author himself. Along with it, we also look at the elements of creation and with it it being the parallel of the elements of creation along with the elements of the eternal, the divine, the cosmic. So the elements of creation, that is human, and the cosmic, that is beyond the realm of the mortal. So these two elements that have been juxtaposed to together and have been brought together, have been unified as and has been depicted through the element of Sringara, that is the rasa of love in the play. We look at the so in the previous class we discussed the first three acts in Abhijanana Shakuntalam. The first three acts talk about the first act is where Dushyanta is seen chasing a deer. He's seen chasing a deer, and the king Dushyanta, who is chasing a deer, enters the forest, and he hears a voice that asks him to not kill the deer, and he gets to know that he's near the hermitage of Kannava. Kannava is the father of Shakuntala. Kannava had adopted Sakuntala, who has been left, who was left by her parents, that is Vishwamitra and the Apsara Menaka. She was brought up by Kannava, and there in Act 1 we see for the first time Dushyanta and Shakuntala meet. Dushyanta and Shakuntala meet in Act 1. In Act 2, the king is seen conversing with his friend, with the court jester Madhya, who reminds king of his duty, Dushyanta of his duty as a king, and asks him to come back to his capital Hastinapur. But we see that somehow, because Dushyanta wants to spend time with Shakuntala, is enamored by the hermit girl Shakuntala, he makes up a story and asks Madhya to return to the court and perform the duties, you know, uh, uh, perform the duties in place of him. And this is what Act 2 is all about. Then in Act 3, for the first time, Dushyanta and Shakuntala are seen confessing their love to each other. Now we are introduced to the concept of love and duty in the first three acts itself. The idea of nature, the use of nature to enhance the element of Sringara Rasa. This rasa deals with, or is about, is about love. This rasa depicts both Sambhoga, that is union, coming together of the lovers, as is seen in the case of Shakuntala and Dushyanta in the play, and also their parting, which is Vipralamba. So Sringara Rasa is divided into two parts. The first is Sambhoga, the union, and the other is Vipralamba, that is the parting of lovers. Now the parting of lovers would be there in Act 3, 4, is in Act 4, 5, 6, and finally the union again in Act 7. So till Act 3 we have already discussed, and also along with love and duty, the role of nature in enhancing the rasa of the play, the image of the imagery, the imagery of the nature imageries that are used in the play symbolically, that allude to coming together of lovers, that are used to describe the beauty of the female protagonist in the play. All of this is very important when we are understanding Shakuntala. Now, as we move ahead, we see that in Act 4, what happens is that the friends that is Priyamvada and Anasuya are discussing with each other that Shakuntala has married her lover, that is the king, uh, Dushyanta, and let's see how it goes on, how the plot is taken ahead by the playwright Kalidasa. So, Kalidas, this Act 4, is titled The Departure of Shakuntala, and the scene is in the Hermitage ground. Just like in Act 2, where Shakuntala was absent from the performance, from the performative part of the play, she was only referred to when she was being discussed with the friend, the Vidushaka, the court jester Madhvya. Similarly, in Act 4, the king is absent. He's not seen he's only referred to, and he's not seen in Act 4. So Act 2 and Act 4, with regards to this, as um, um, where we see the world of king, that is the world of court, colliding with the world of the green world, the world of Shakuntala, but they do not meet, as is shown through the character of Madhvya. The world of court and the green world of Shakuntala never meet. In Act 2, Shakuntala is absent, she never gets to meet Madhvya, and Madhvya, who is representing the difference between the world of the king and the world of Shakuntala, the green world and the gilded world, the world of the court, is only there, only stands on the margin and returns back to the court. Similarly here, the world of court is referred to in Act 4, but it is never seen colliding. It is only, Shakuntala does go to the world of king, to the court, but she leaves from there. She doesn't stay there. So let's see how the plot unfolds. So Act 4, that is titled Shakuntala's Departure, starts with a prelude, a interlude. So in the interlude, the conversation is between the two friends, Priyamvada and Anasuya, who reveal that Dushyanta has married Shakuntala by Gandharva form of marriage, and then leaves for his capital after promising to send a suitable guard to bring his wife to his palace. When Shakuntala is alone in the hermitage, her thoughts being away with her absent husband, she fails to offer proper hospitality to the sage Durvasa when he visits the hermitage. The hot-tempered sage curses her, saying, "He of whom them art thinking, even while neglecting to receive me properly as a guest, will not remember you, even when reminded by you." Fortunately, her friends Priyamvada and Anasuya hear him, one of whom pleads with him and obtains a concession insofar that the curse would cease to have effect on the production of some token of recognition. Since the friends know that Shakuntala has Dushyanta's ring as a token, they are relieved, and so they decide not to say anything about the curse even to Shakuntala. Now, before I begin with the critical analysis of the prelude and the act itself, I would bring to your attention that this act is extremely significant. Significant in, this act could be seen as the climax of the plot too, or building up of the climax of the plot too. How it begins is, we know that this play, the play that we are reading is taken from the epic Mahabharata, from its Adi Parva, the first book, the beginning of the first book, Adi Parva. And in from the epic, the playwright, that is Kalidasa, draws all the elements of moral and philosophical dialogues that define the narrative of the epic, that is the Mahabharata. So he introduces here, because this is a combination of the element of the philosophical discourse, the moral discourse that is there in the Mahabharata, with it the element of fairy tale, with it the element of romance that are there in this play. It is following the convention of nataka, of drama, of performance, where we have we have the nati, we have a nayak, and we have a nataka that is being performed. And the purpose of nataka, as is given in Natya Shastra, is to also give pleasure to the audience as much as to enlighten them, educate them. Hence, In this, the aspect of pleasure is introduced through the element, the fairy tale element, that is also taking from the oral tradition, by introducing the aspect of curse, by introducing the aspect of a token of recognition, that is the ring, right? So all of this is very important. Along with it, also the Gandharva Vivaha, right? That she is married to a lover by the conventions, by the convention of, by the validity, her marriage is valid by the rules that are prescribed by the very virtue of Gandharva Vivaha. So what is Gandharva Vivaha, right? Because the prelude is telling us about about three things. First is the Gandharva Vivaha. The second is the token of recognition that becomes important, that becomes central to the play. And how does it become central? By introducing a human element, by introducing a human element of curse. Now you would remember that Sage Durvasa, who is an important, who becomes an important figure in this play, that is taken from the epic Mahabharata, from the Adi Parva, the first book, is also important later on when when Shantanu's son, the wife of Pandu, is given by him a boon, right? So let us look at it. What actually is Gandharva Vivaha, what is curse, and what is this, what role does the ring play in the play? So Kalidasa expands the detail of Shakuntala's rejection, defense, and final acceptance with great artistic skill. So Kalidasa expands the details of Shakuntala's rejection, defense, and final acceptance with great artistic skills. Shakuntala in the play is sent in her husband's court while still pregnant, and the king does not recognize her because of Durvasa's curse. Kalidasa, Shakuntala, constantly needs others to protect her and defend her. She even forgets to honor the sage Durvasa because she is engrossed in her thoughts of king, and the sage curses her. Now she forgets to perform her duty. This very idea of, uh, idea of her forgetting to perform her duty is bound with Kalidasa drawing from you know from the from what has been prescribed in the scriptures regarding duty, regarding desire, regarding the the four goals of human life. So even when in love, if you perform, love should not hinder um, in any aspect of you performing your duties, what has been uh, given in the scriptures. So when Shakuntala forgets to perform her duty, she has committed a sin. She has committed a sacrilege, right? And this is why she has been cursed, right? And also this is keeping in with the tradition of Indian poetics, where when we look at the classical Sanskrit, the classical Sanskrit poetics, the Indian poetics, and what is there in the work of Kalidasa. It is also keeping in with this idea of the philosophical idea of what is morality, what is moral, what is duty. So she forgets to honor. So while this curse plays, in performance, it plays the role of taking the plot forward. It is also on the other side playing the role of taking the philosophical discourse, further in the play. So Kalidasa, Shakuntala constantly needs others to protect her and defend her. Now, unlike the Shakuntala that is there in the epic, who asked, before she marries Dushyanta, asks Dushyanta that her son would be the king. We do not see the Shakuntala of the play doing the same. She doesn't ask Dushyanta for it. Instead, she's as taken by the pleasure, by the love, as is the king. So Kalidasa's Shakuntala constantly needs others to protect and defend her. She even forgets to honor the sage Durvasa because she is engrossed in her thoughts of the king, and the sage curses her. Fortunately, words and intercede on her behalf. Her friends intercede on her behalf. He cannot take back his curse. Durvasa cannot take back his curse. Hence, he modifies the curse and says that instead of the love completely forgetting about Shakuntala, she will be recognized by the love if she is going to show him a token that he has given her. Now, I'll be referring to critical discussion and reading material that is given in the SOL study material constantly, and along with it, few other works. So Shakuntala herself is extremely shy and retiring, the romanticized persona of a woman of upper caste culture. Initially, she does not even address the king directly, speaking to him through her friends. She is almost pushed into conversation with him, and he makes it obvious that he is deeply attracted to her. She reciprocates his sentiment and is so motivated by romantic love that only after an initial hesitation she accepts his offer of a Gandharva Vibha. So the skeletal story in this version, the version of the play, is the same, that is taken from the epic Mahabharata, but without the curse. A powerful addition introduced by Kalidasa. The curse is the stereotypical impediment of the folk tale. Its object is a woman, and therefore she becomes responsible for the turn of events. Similarly, as Draupadi becomes an important figure, female figure in the turn of events. Similarly, here we have, a woman, that is Shakuntala, who becomes responsible for the turn of events. So it would be argued that since marriage and procreation are generally not associated with an ashrama, the marriage of Shakuntala has affected its purity. So the very idea of purity, pavitrita, has been brought to forum, and hence has been introduced the concept of the very philosophical doctrine of penance to combine, to bridge the gap between the external, that is seen in act 1, act 2, act 3, where both the lovers are attracted to each other's physical beauty, and do not know the other, the internal other. They do not know the self, and also the other. So in order to bridge this gap between the external and the internal, this journey, right, because we know that it is the very purpose of drama is also to educate the audience. So the curse was an attempt to erase this impurity. It becomes the antidote of the Gandharva marriage. It becomes the antidote of the Gandharva marriage. It annuls the marriage. It is the negotiation of the emotion which has nurtured the sentiment of love. Both the curse and the signet ring are allegorical. Now, you may ask, what does the term allegorical actually means, right? What is allegorical? Now, allegorical is simply, a short moral story. So it is keeping with the conventions of morality. It becomes a visible symbol which is representing the idea of morality, right? The both curse and the ring. So the ring, specially a signet ring, binds and signifies a person placing himself in the hands of the other. This continues the flow of action. The curse stops the flow of action or diverts it to other realms and distinguishes between the one who is under the curse and others. The link is not accidental, for the ring is required to make the curse effective as well as to resolve the problem of separation. The curse and the ring, seemingly the subplot of the narrative, alter it substantially. The subplot indirectly introduces the power of those who supersede the human, the rishi and the deity, and their opposition as symbolized in the relationship between Indra and the rishis. The curse takes on the form of faith, and brings about a situation of immanent tragedy. So the curse introduces the human element that derives from human nature and introduces the human element to the otherwise the otherwise unification of a fairy tale, of an epic narrative, right? um, so it introduces an intervention beyond human manipulation also. So along with it, it is also introducing the element of faith that is beyond human manipulation, right? So nor is it is completely fatalistic faith, since it has an evident cause. Shakuntala's because it is not a fatalistic faith also in this, because we know that by the end of the play, we see that the curse is being justified by Maricha and Aditi, by the whole play, by the playwright himself, who sees it as an important machinery, an important tool in justifying the position, in justifying the choice of Shakuntala, and also in bridging the gap between the internal and the external, and also establishing the balance, right? So Shakuntala appears to be a counterpoint to the other women in the play, most evidently to her companions Priyamvada and Anasuya, as well as the women of the court. The forthright, free-speaking Shakuntala of the epic, making her bargain with Dushyanta, undergoes a radical change in the play. Here she is an innocent child of the ashram, grappling with the emotions of love, bewildered by the instincts of sexual desire, with which she is unacquainted. The natural woman of the forest who knows no deceit. She is persuaded to the Gandharva marriage and makes no condition, as did the epic Shakuntala. A comparison of the depiction of Shakuntala in the epic and the play indicates the influence of patriarchy in conceptualizing the role of women of the upper caste. But perhaps we should tease out the nature of this change. Patriarchal norms need not always be introduced as a binary alternative. Indian society has always had a multiplicity of segmented forms, which makes generalizations about the totality complicated. Each segment would have experienced change and would have related to change differently. There is not only polygamy, sometimes each new marriage may be legalized through only one of the 8 forms of marriage. So we know this is the third marriage for the king, right? And also, this marriage, the very idea of marriage, the sanctity of marriage, the idea of purity of women is keeping with the norms of the society, right? But also, we have to, understand the classical play uh, as related to the multiplicity of its forms, right? Um, so thus, a king could be married through the most respectable forms of kanyadan, the gifting of daughter by the father, or through paying a bride price, or through a Gandharva marriage. The ambiguity of Gandharva marriage stems from Sarangarva's depiction of it as a secret marriage with a hint of seduction, and the rebuke that elders were not informed. So Gandharva marriage is described as something that is equally valid, but both Shakuntala and Dushyanta have to pay a price for it, because it is born out of their desire, right? A desire which has relegated duty to the background, right? As is seen in the case of Dushyanta, who is not able to, who does not in Act 2 perform his duty as a king, right? Similarly, when in Act 4, Shakuntala is not has to is not able to perform her duty as a host, right? So the concern with the erotic introduced the question of morality. So this very element of curse, this element of Gandharva Vivaha, this introduces the question of morality. This was not the morality of Dushyanta's rejection of Shakuntala, but that of Shakuntala responding to sexual desire and agreeing to Gandharva marriage. An essay written by Rabindranath Tagore in Bengali and published in Prasina Sahitya in 1907 was translated into English by Jadunath Sarkar for publication in the Modern Review under the title Shakuntala, its inner meaning. At the beginning, we see her self-forgetful and obedient to nature's impulses. As you could see in Act 1, she's obedient and she follows the nature's impulses. How she points out that the mango tree is calling out to her. And we see a deeper feminine in her, patient, intent on austerities, strictly regulated by the sacred laws of piety. With matchless art of Kalidasa, he places his hero in Shakuntala at the meeting point of action and calmness. Her father was a hermit, but her mother was a nymph. Her birth was the outcome of an interrupted austerity, but her nurture was in a hermitage, which is just the spot where nature and austerities, beauty and restraint are harmonized. So the balance between the earthlings, right, the mortals, right, and the celestials, and the people who have completely fallen. So the balance between it, that is shown through the mortal Shakuntala and Dushyanta, and also the element of faith, right? The element of faith, which is very tightly bound to to the very idea of kala, the very idea of time, because we know this is taken from Adi Parva, and later on this lineage is that of the Pandus, of the Kauravas. Now there is none of the conventional bond of society there. Yet we see the harder regulation of religion. Her Gandharva marriage too was of the same type. It has the wilderness of nature joined to the social tie of wedlock. The argument would run that Kalidasa does not concede transgression of the moral code, therefore penance is required. Now, the moral code that has been transgressed by the king and Shakuntala needs to be, this transgression needs to be uh, balanced. Hence, penance is required. Hence, the introduction of Vipralamba Sringara, the separation of lovers, right? So the fall and surrender of Shakuntala is something of a contradiction, since Tagore speaks of Gandharva marriage as the wildness of nature joined to the social tie of wedlock. If such a marriage is socially accepted, then surely Shakuntala has not fallen, even by Victorian rules of the game, unless of course any expression of passion and sexual love constitutes a fall. Tagore adds that Kalidasa has developed her as the model of a devoted wife with her reserve, endurance of sorrow, and rigid discipline. And that at the end we see her true feminine being, which is sober, patient in misfortune, intent on austerities, and strictly regulated by the laws of piety. Right. So her being taken away by the end of Act 4 by Misra Casey, she is, after Shakuntala is rejected by Dushyanta. Dushyanta fails to recognize her because she loses her ring in the pool of Saki. Being taken away by Misra Casey not only introduces the element of divine, but also, is weaving in the plot the very element of penance, that now that she has transgressed, as um, a hermit, as has transgressed the law of hermitage, has transgressed, has committed transgression, has given to her desire, failed to perform her duty. She needs to, also prove herself as pure. And this purity is not just the physical purity, the feminine physical purity, but also a purity of thought. so that you attain, both of them are able to reunite, are able to, are established as, uh, parents of the great emperor Bharata, right? And keeping with the very idea of the Kala Chakra, right? So there might be some hesitation in accepting the Gandharva form of marriage, when in the present only the unqualified validity of Kanyadan, the gifting of daughter, is acceptable. From this perspective, marriage by mutual consent may not be a sacrament and requires the approval of parents. Such approval is of course given by Kannava, although it is only in the last act of the play that marriage is blessed by Indra, Maricha and Aditi. The question of Shakuntala's identity as hovering between the two categories is thrown into sharp relief by the curse, which makes of her a wanton woman through Dushyanta's rejection. So this purity is also established through the curse. Otherwise her position would have been that of a wanton woman. So the lifting of the curse elevates her to the status of a lawful wife, or a lawful wife who is a prativarta, right? She doesn't fail to perform her duty as a devoted wife. So this rather prosaic interpretation, however, seems to be contradicted by her being taken to the most elevated of abodes, the ashrama of Maricha, precisely at the point where a rejection could assume the worst connotation. So it is when she is going to be, completely an outlaw, her, her, uh, she's saved by the intervention, by this, by the divine intervention. When Misra Kesi, the friend of her mother Menaka, takes her away to Maricha's ashram. So Kalidasa takes the theme from the epic but fills it out with subplots involving a curse and a signet ring. In adapting a known theme, he is following the theoretical rules relating to heroic comedies, in which earlier stories from the epics were frequently reworked. It could be said that the subplots are almost as important as the main story, for they may be the cause of both the separation of the lovers and ultimately of their coming together again. Such subplots are also used by Kalidasa in other plays, where some of the action revolves around a curse and reunion. The subplots draw in those elements which are of the supernatural and the magical, right? So the element of curse, the element of her being taken away, all of this is the introduction of supernatural and magical in the subplot, right? Mm, uh, so in writing this play, Kalidasa selected a theme from the epic, but the sub-themes may well have come from folk literature. A flavor of this is found in some of the Jatakas, which were popular tales, each with a moral conforming to Buddhist ethics. The Akhyana or narrative from the epic was converted into a Nataka. So this is a part of Akhyana that is converted into Nataka. Uh, and so the Nataka is keeping with the literary genre of Nataka, the convention of a drama. So in the process, there is a selection of an item from the past, a conscious looking back at it, and the creating of new form compatible with contemporary perspective. The play follows the outline of the epic story but introduces some changes which weave in the elements of stereotypes from other sources, the whole being structured into a sophisticated dramatic form. This was a characteristic feature of the Nataka, typically heroic drama of romantic nature. The theme was based on a well-known story, often with the Itihasa Purana tradition. But added to it was an element of originality and innovation, the quality of the language, and the finally coming together, the intermeshed dialogues and plot lifted from the conventional to the unique. So all these the subplot that involves a curse, a signet, a ring from which Shakuntala is recognized, makes this play unique. Even though we see that it has been drawn from the story, the main story has been drawn from the epic Mahabharata. So the play was intended for performance, not for recitation, and was performed at the court. So the very aspect that it is to be performed, makes us come to the point that this taken from the Akhyana of the epic, which is also keeping with the ethical conventions, with the moral, the moral teachings, the moral preachings, is also weaving in it, is also bringing in it, is also introducing in it for the dramatic effect, for the pleasure of the audience, the supernatural, the magical. So, what is the plot of Act 4 after the prelude ends that talks about the marriage, which talks about the curse, which talks about, uh, um, you know, um, um, uh, the token, the signet from that has been given to Priyamvada, that has been given to Shakuntala by the king Dushyanta. So, what is the after the prelude ends? We see that Rishi Durvasa storms off, and one of the friends, Anasuya, pleads with the sage that please let this curse be lifted. Or so he says that of okay, I am I'll modify the curse, and Shakuntala would be remembered by Dushyanta if she's able to produce this ring in front of the king. So, worried for Shakuntala, Anusuya begins to question Dushyanta's action and wonders how to inform Kannava, the father, about his daughter's marriage and pregnancy. So, the resolution arrives in the form of spiritual voice that announces the union of Shakuntala and Dushyanta in Act 4 itself. So, constantly there would be, even in Act in Act 6, in Act 1, we see that there is a voice, a voice that is off stage, that is announcing things, that is reprimanding, right? Which also plays a significant role in taking the plot forward, right? And also keeping with the convention of this play being a part of the Itihasa Purana. So the resolution arrives in the form of a spiritual voice that announces the union of Shakuntala and Dushyanta to the great sage. Kannava is overjoyed at this and decides to send Shakuntala to Dushyanta's court, and with few ascetics, that is, he sends with her, along with her, he sends Gautami, he sends Sarangava. So both of them, and with it, we also see in the court there is a high priest. So all of these are escorting Shakuntala. Shakuntala's departure from the hermitage is described in great details to us. Everyone is filled with sorrow in seeing her leave. And as Shakuntala bids farewell to her home and embraces her family and friends for the last time, Kannava instructs her on her duty to the king and others at the palace. The finality of Shakuntala's separation from the world of hermitage is established through Kannava's word, where he says that she can only return after fulfilling her duties as a wife and mother in the final years of her life, of her life with her husband. So we see that how Act 4 begins. There are two friends who are meditating between Shakuntala and Dushyanta, and the play differs from the epic, where the story is told virtually as a dialogue between the protagonist, with almost no participation of other persons of the ashram. So in the epic, what we see is that there is no participation of other characters, but in the play there is. We see that there are dialogues by various other characters too. There's a so other characters to participate in the dialogue that is going on in the play, in the plot of the play. So Priyamvada generally takes the initiative, for instance, explaining Shakuntala's birth and identity of the king. So her friends also play a very important role. And as we see in the benediction, the very starting, before Act 1, there was a benediction, and there was a reference to both Priyamvada and Anusuya, right? Because the benediction, apart from being an offering, a praise of the Lord, as well as you know and asking a request to the creator, uh, uh, right? It is also summarizing the play for us. So her friends also are seen to be playing an important role in this Right. Now, Priyamvada is closer in spirit to the independent and competent Shakuntala of the epic version, and is therefore a foil to the helpless Shakuntala in the play. So, the introduction of the two motifs of the curse and the signet ring changed the purpose of the story, and probably encouraged by the incorporation of Vira into Shringara. So, as I said, Shringara Rasa is divided into is divided into two types. The first is that of union, that is Sambhoga. The other is that of Vira, that is separation, that is Vipralamba. So the separation of the lovers is what is introduced to us in through the introduction of the two motifs, right? That is of the curse and the ring. So both the motifs are stereotypical items of the folk literature and have a have a interdependent relationship. The curse acts as an impediment of the action. The ring, as a token of recognition, resolves the problem. Signet rings had become fashionable with the coming of the Yavanas, the Indo-Greeks, and those associated with Mediterranean trade. It is thought to be specially potent since it encapsulated the power of the person in addition to being the object prompting the recognition. The theme is familiar from other texts. Sita, for example, in Ramayana, Sita recognizes the signet ring of Rama, and its even more central role in the play of Visakha Datta, the Mudra Kasa. So the skeletal story in this version as in Kalidasa's version of the play Shakuntala, is the same, but without the curse, a powerful addition introduced by Kalidasa. The curse is the stereotypical impediment of the folktale. Its object is a woman, and therefore she becomes responsible for the turn of events. It could be argued that since marriage and procreation are generally not associated with an ashrama, the marriage of Shakuntala affected its purity. So this also brings us, to this very idea of how the very idea of creation is associated with feminine energy, and the in the benediction itself, you would see it as the coming together of the erotic and the spiritual, the erotic and the historic, right? The historic and the erotic, they are coming together. It is the cosmic and the and the cosmic uh, um, um, and the uh, and the mortal, or the cosmic, um, the unknown and the known, the coming together of the known and the unknown, and also all of this that are in a way focusing on the idea of creation, the creator and the creation. So this idea of creation, which is associated with the feminine energy, as is seen through this symbolic representation of Shiva and Shakti, that is the ideological the ideological uh, imperative that is also used by the playwright, that is Kalidasa, in his work. So it is the Shakti, right? It is the Shakti, the creation, the feminine energy, which is associated with fertility, and say this role of the feminine energy in the play too, where be it Sita, be it your Draupadi, be it your Sakuntala in this play, are all becoming central in turning the course of events. They are becoming responsible for the turn of events. Uh, it could be argued that since the marriage and procreation are generally not associated with ashrama, the marriage of Shakuntala is affected by by the question of purity. So the curse was an attempt to erase this impurity. It could become the antidote of Gandharva marriage, since in effect it annuls the marriage. It is the negation of emotion which has nurtured the sentiment of love. Both the curse and the signet ring are allegorical. The ring, especially a signet ring, binds and signifies a person placing himself in the hands of other. This continues the flow of action, and with it, it is very important to also see, associate the idea of purity and impurity that is associated with this very, very, delicate discourse regarding creation, regarding feminine energy. which has, of course, been a question of central debate when we look at how critics of scholars have interpreted the character of Sakuntala and how her character has been delineated in the play, be it in the epic, be it in the play, right? Uh, Now, the curse stops the flow of action or diverts it to form realms and distinguishes between the one who is under a curse and others. The link is not accidental, for the ring is required to make the curse effective as well as to resolve the problem of separation. The curse and the ring, seemingly the subplot of the narrative, alter it substantially. The subplot indirectly introduces the power of those who supersede the human, the rishi and the deity, and their opposition as symbolized in the relationship between Indra and the rishis. The curse takes on the form of faith and brings about a situation of immanent tragedy, providing the conflict necessary to the exploration of moral values. Therefore, the penance is necessary to a true and eternal union of Dushyanta and Shakuntala. So this is this is what is being introduced into the action by the very motive of the ring and the curse, right? Also brings to us makes us think about the very conceptualization of love and duty, the role played by the curse, by the ring in the recognition of Shakuntala, the very idea of fatalistic faith that intervenes, and with it the human nature that has been introduced to this philosophical speculation regarding duty, regarding desire, right? So Act 5 has been titled as the repudiation of Shakuntala. So this is what is there in Act 4. Predominantly the themes that are there in Act 4. It is about the curse. It is about the marriage, the Gandharva marriage. It is about the token of recognition, that is the ring, right? So, and the various, the various elements that are associated with these three. Now, Act 5 is about, the repudiation of Shakuntala. The scene is the forest. The scene is the court of the king. It is not the forest. It is the court of the king. Um, so the scene shifts to from Act 4 to Act 5. We see the scene shifting from the hermitage, from the green world of nature to Dushyanta's capital. So the the nature, the symbolism, the symbolism that is being the use of nature to symbolize that is being used symbolically is in contrast with the world of Dushyanta, the world of court, as we'll see in Act 5. So the scene shifts to Dushyanta's capital. The ascetics escorting Shakuntala arrive at the royal palace. After an exchange of greetings, the escorting sage, that is Sarangarva, conveys Kannava's message, requesting him to accept his wife Shakuntala. The king, under the influence of the curse, denies the whole affair, and even Shakuntala fails to rise his curse-swept memory. To rouse his curse-swept memory. As a last resort, she wants to show him his ring as a means of recognition, but as ill luck would have it, it has slipped off her fingers into the river waters, that is the Saki pool. Mutual recriminations lead to nothing. Her escorts leave her to her fate and leave. The royal priest takes the responsibility of her custody, but meanwhile, a celestial lady descends and carries Shakuntala away. That is Misra Kesi. The king is left musing in a gloom of vexatious uncertainty. So what is happening in Act 5 is Shakuntala reaches the court of Dushyanta. Shakuntala the people who are escorting her remind the king of request the king to take his legally wedded wife to accept his legally wedded wife, that is Shakuntala. But the king is under the influence of the curse. Dushyanta is under the influence of the curse, and he completely forgets about Shakuntala. Now, Shakuntala tries to continuously pleads with him, reasons with him, argues with him regarding, regarding her um, um, regarding how she is not what she's saying is not is not untrue, is she is not some some she's not any woman who has come to the court with some with some intentions, with a strategy to to bring ill, to bring to bring any sort of uh, you know to kind of bring bad name to the king, or to with the intention to to be a part, to be a part of this court, to enjoy the luxury of the king's material wealth. She is not any woman who has any sort of ill intentions, but even though her arguments all fail, because the king is under the influence of the curse, it introduces to us, it it highlights for us important elements that are used by the playwright, that is Kalidasa. First of all is that of memory. What role does memory play in this particular play? Right. Along with, we know that the how the subplot of curse and the motive of ring are playing their part in the play. Right. Finally, what after the king fails to recognize Shakuntala, the Shakuntala leaves from the court, having been humiliated by the king. But not before she utters that, just like Sita of Ramayana, that if there is any power that is watching over us, and if I am, what I am saying is true, may I be, may I die, may I be gobbled up by this earth. And this is what happens as soon as she leaves the court of the king, that she is swept away to the hermitage of Maricha and Aditi by Misra Kesi, that is the friend of her mother, of her mother who is a nymph, Menaka. Now, the ring also highlights for us, because a ring plays a central role also in Act 5, because it is lost in the Saki pool, and she's not able to produce this signet in front of the king. As Durvasa had said, if she does, she would be recognized. But it is keeping with the ethical implications that are there in the play. You know, the moral discourse that is there in the play, that the balance has to be established. So the ring also signifies centrality of memory in the play, where remembering becomes a device for recalling emotion, both the emotion of reunion and of separation. It hints at two kinds of power, that of the rishi and that of the king. In the conflict between the two of the power, of power, we come to question, we come to see, the audience sees, the audience witnesses the greater power that is in control of the events, to the extent that past is essential to the reality of the present. The loss of the past, or even a part of it, changes the texture of the present, as is there in this case, the loss of the ring. So there is a disjuncture between the experience of the past, the exterior world, and the continuity from the past. The intervention of memory, or rather the loss of it in the case, creates the possibility of viewing both protagonists through dichotomous situation, one of an emotion fulfilled in the ashrama and other of the rejection of the court. Now, because the intervention of memory also helps us view both the protagonist Shakuntala and Dushyanta from two situations, that is of the emotions that were fulfilled in ashrama and the emotions that are there when Shakuntala is being rejected. So the time change in the last act crystallizes the encrustations of the intervening years. Barbara Stoller Miller writes evocatively that memory has the power to shatter the logic of mundane life. So, here the very element of memory is being used to make the invisible visible. It is abolishing the distance and it is reversing the chronology. So how the intervention of memory is being used by the by the playwright, by Kalidasa, right, to introduce a new dimension to the chronology of events in the play. So the question has been asked as to whether Kalidasa uses memory to introduce us into the universe of imagination evoked by beauty, as has been asserted by the later commenter Abhinav Gupta. It can also be linked to love, where Smaran has a double meaning of both memory and love. Does memory recall past love or does love recall the memory of it? In the play, memory and love are interlinked. In memory also, the forgetting of the past. For it comes to be superimposed as the vision of the past into our perception of the present. Dushyanta's amnesia, that is forgetting of Shakuntala, is also a comment on memory, that it is unreliable and is apparently from the effectiveness of the curse, which raises the question of who forgets and why. Did the Vidushaka remember the romance between the girl from the ashrama but prefer to not remind Dushyanta about it? Memories are personal but also involve a sharing of the vision of the past. How then is memory reconstructed in the abstract or visually? Dushyanta's attempt to capture the memory of his love into a painting is also an attempt at re-experiencing a past event. However fragmented and momentary this re-experiencing may be. So this is very important. The element of memory, the role of memory in the play is very important because it is not only helping us, understand the viewing of the protagonist through through the viewing a protagonist in different situation, the emotion, the Sringara, as has been depicted in Act 1 and as is being depicted in the court, and also how it is keeping in with the very with the very tradition of very convention that is being used by Kalidasa, the very device that is being used by Kalidasa of memory to introduce us into the universe of imagination, right? And this imagination that is playing the double has a double meaning, both of the memory of love and then a memory of love, and this memory that is also now forgotten, right? That is the forgetting of the past. Now this is making the invisible visible for us, right? That what is the effect of the curse? It is making that invisible, right? That what would be the role of the very motive of curse that has been introduced, the very motive of the very question of balance, the very question of the moral implication of the Gandharva Vivah that has been introduced in the play, and all of this becomes more apparent with the device of memory that has been used by Kalidasa. So the use of token ring, the other aspect of of the token ring is also this, that it is well known and occurs in many folk tales as well as other narratives. In a Greek story, where there is also in many folk tales this has the ring has been used as a token, and even in a Greek story where we have Pelcritus throwing his ring into the sea, and it was assumed returned to him after 6 days by a fisherman who found it in the belly of a fish. Was Kalidasa familiar with the story, as has been suggested? The Indian version of the story associated with these subplots are known, as for instance in the stereotypical narrative which tells us of a man away from home who falls in love with a woman and leaves his ring with her as a token of his identity. This is told in Buddhist story Jataka. refashioned to suit a Buddhist ethic, where the ring is a token not only of identity but also of the legitimacy of the wife and son born to her, in fact, of importance for the same reason as in the Kalidasa play. It is possible the idea of introducing the signet ring was borrowed by Kalidasa from Kathahari Jataka, or that it may have come from the common sources of an oral tradition. So while we see the element of the ring being important central to the play, it is entwined with the idea of memory. Um, Yet, where from is the origin of it is that it has been used in many folk tales. So it has been used from many folk tales. The possible, it could have been the source for it could have also been oral tradition. It could have been the Jataka stories. Now, Act 7, that is titled Shakuntala's Prosperity. The scene first is of the celestial region, then the hermitage of Maricha and Aditi. Um, so, a fisherman whom the police accuses of theft discovers the ring inside the fish. The king, whose curse is removed at the sight of the ring, of course, lets him off. He remembers his marriage with Shakuntala. So, basically, what is happening in Act 7 is that it starts with a prelude. Okay, it starts with a prelude, and this prelude. Yes, so I'm sorry for that. It starts with a prelude, and what is happening in this is that in the prelude there is a fisherman, there is a chief of police, there are two policemen, there is a fisherman, two policemen, and the chief of police. And this fisherman, as I was saying, that this very element of a fisherman finding the ring, and the ring as an important central part of the play draws from the oral tradition. So here too we see that there is a fisherman who finds the ring. He is caught by the policemen who accuse him of theft and present him in front of the king in the court, and the king, looking at the ring, is reminded of the uh, is reminded of Shakuntala, right? The curse is finally lifted. But this makes the king even more despondent, even more sad, even more helpless. Now he starts to grieve. He starts to grieve, and his grief knows no bound. Because not only has he forgotten about his wife completely, but what he did with her, how he shunned her off, makes him feel extremely guilty. And and again the question of duty is brought to fore, and here we finally see the union of the culmination of the four purusharth, that is well desire, duty, and finally the idea of moksha, right? So we see the culmination of it, and with the coming of the king is reminded of Shakuntala, and then the king, the friend who had taken off, the Apsara, the nymph who had taken off Shakuntala to Maricha's hermitage, is watching over the conversation that unfolds after Dushanta has realizes that what Shakuntala was saying was actually true. So she realizes that the faith has intervened, and Shakuntala has been recognized, and but still the penance has not been completed. And it is only when Matali, Indra's charioteer, comes to the king, she asks him to play his part, to perform his duty, and that his his he is required to fight off the demons, that He goes he for he goes to fight to in goes to fight this battle with the demons, the enemies of Indra. And when Dushyanta is returning when Dushyanta is returning after having won the battle, that he reaches the hermitage, and finally we see the union of the two lovers. But what is what is this is a this seems very simple, yet the what are the what are the layers of um, um, layers of insight that have been layers of insight of the various layers of the dramatic convention, that is there in the last act. So the prelude is informing us about a fisherman who has been found who is found with the lost royal ring. The guard soldiers, law enforcers accuse him of stealing the ring, but he claims to have found it in the stomach of a fish he caught. The fisherman's innocence is proven once Dushyanta sees the ring and rewards the man for finding it. Dushyanta then remembers Shakuntala, their marriage, and is promised to bring her to his palace. He is ashamed of his behavior and cannot figure out why his memory lapsed at that particular moment. He is distraught about how he repudiated Shakuntala and the cruel way in which he doubted her. His sorrow at having lost his beloved is so severe that he orders the cancellation of the celebration of the spring festival. Dushyanta tries to recreate his first encounter with Shakuntala by painting it and conversing with the painting. Madhvya, the court jester, laments how the king has become so despondent that he has lost all vitality. Now, again, because Madhvya, we are discussing again, so the role of Madhvya is very important. Okay, the role of Madhvya is very important because Madhvya is not simply a jester in the play. Okay, he is not simply a jester in the play. He is somebody who is seen to be constantly, seen play. He If we look at the performative aspect of the play, because we know this is a performance, this is a nataka, so he is seen to be somehow trying to unify the element of magical and the real in the play. This is the role, this is the role that he is seen to be playing. Along with it, Madhva is also very important in how he keeps on constantly reminding Dushyanta of his duty, and also as a sub part of it, how he is a representation, how he is a representation of the court. He is symbolizing the court, the courtly world, where in Act 2 uh, he's seen chastising the king for making him go through this arduous journey of hunt, of the chase, where arduous journey of hunt, in the chase, where he knows that he would not be able to even get proper food, right? So also Madhvya constantly keeps on reminding him of his duty as a king, and Madhvya, is seen to be opposition to the green world of Shakuntala. He's worldly in his arguments. He's worldly in his wit. Um, you know. Um, so the role of the court jester is also very important in the play. Now, another important thing is that of memory, right? Um, so, the memory is also playing a very important role in the play, as we saw earlier. Along with it, it is also introducing a quality of dream, to the play, the quality of a dream to the play. So, We see that Madhvya laments how the king has become so despondent and has lost all his vitality. Um, and has lost all his vitality. Meanwhile, Misra Kesi, a friend of Shakuntala's mother Menaka, quietly observes Dushanta's behavior. Finding his remorse genuine, she goes back to Apsara pool to report her findings to Shakuntala. Even as Dushanta is racked with remorse, he deals with matters of the state and is approached with the problem of solving the inheritance. Uh, um, So the merchant's wealth is said to be appropriated by the royal treasury, but Dushyanta asks for wealth to be given to one of the merchant's pregnant wife, thereby ensuring that the child is born is not left penniless. Dushyanta feels bad for his ancestors as he is himself without any child till now, which will leave them without anyone to perform the sacred rites and rituals. This adds to the misery and he faints. On waking up, Dushyanta learns that some invisible entity is threatening Madhvya. As he rushes to save his friend, it is revealed that the entity is Matali, Lord Indra's charioteer, who is seeing a dejected Dushyanta, devises this plan to rouse him into action. Matali requests Dushyanta to fight on the behalf of the gods against the demons, bent on destroying them. Dushyanta readily agrees and then leaps on Indra's chariot. So this is about this is there in this in the last act. If we look at um, you know what in Act 7, so Matali is seen calling for the king, and finally the king agrees to go to goes with it with Matali, and they are, the king wins. Dushyanta wins. Um, now. Now remember again this throbbing of arm in the very start of the play and in the end of acts in the last act, right? In Act 1, the union of lovers, and the union of lovers in the last act. The just now please look, try to look at it from okay, not try to understand it. Of course, you can interpret the play in multiple ways. You can how you understand the play is completely your choice, but a few points to consider. The very first act, and that is the act where where we see the union of lovers, the shringara, the Sambhoga Shringara, unfolding itself through the nature imagery. The desire that is so, the element of desire that is so dominant. Uh, in the last act, this desire, this desire has been, overcome with a, with a sense of self, the knowing of self, right? So this union, that is going to be the final union where we see, which has been titled as the prosperity. The prosperity, it sees the culmination of, or the unification of, the two elements of Sringara Rasa, that is Sambhoga and that is Viraha, right? So, and it starts with the throbbing of arm at it, as it started with the throbbing of arm while the chase had begun. Also, Act 7 sees the description of Sarvadamana, the boy, who is so brave that he is able to play with the little lion, is able to open its jaw wide open, and is counting the teeth, right? Um, now, so this is what goes. We see how the plot in the final act unfolds, and Shakuntala, the boy and the king finally meet, and Shakuntala says, "Dear love, the light of memory has pierced through the slightless night of my dark delusion. By fortune's grace, you now stand before me, O lady of most gracious face, like Rohini in conjunction with the moon appearing at the end of an eclipse." Right. So please look at the description of. How Shakuntala praises how Dushyanta praises Shakuntala in Act 1, and how Dushyanta is praising Shakuntala in Act 7, right, which is very important. Now, the dear love, here the dear love Shakuntala and the king, they are all united, and they are also being blessed by Maricha. So and Aditi, right? So finally, we see that they have been blessed by Maricha and Aditi and by Indra, and their union has been sanctified. Their marriage has been accepted. Um, so, and the play finally ends with a benediction and with the recognition of Shakuntala. The benediction goes on like this: If His Divine Holiness wishes to grant me any further favors, let them be these. May King ever work for the good of their subjects. May the utterance of those blessed by the word be ever honored. May the self existent Lord who unites in himself the dark and the light, whose infinite power pervades this universe, annihilate forever the round of my births. Finally, keeping with, abiding by the law of nature and the law of, the law of being, the law of, the law that governs the human life, the mortal life. There is in the start there is there is a benediction to the Creator, and finally it ends with a thank to the Creator, and with this with this dic- with a kind of a preaching that a king performed the duty, you know and and this unification of the dark and the light. So this unification that was completely that was completely seen from the union in the start, that was just the union of the physical self, is also now the union of the internal self, the dark and the light. um, so again we see the worshipping of Shiva, in his unified form, both the Shiva and the Shakti, the dark and the light, and request to to attain uh, unity with that divine. Now, this benediction, this act is very important, as it makes us, it brings to us a really important, really important um, themes, the really important questions that are explored by scholars, that is looked at into by the playwright himself. So first is that of the concept of duty. So the concept of duty described in ancient literature, Vedas, epics, Puranas, Smritis, Dharmshastras, and even all literary pieces speak of one's duty to be performed every day. Duties may be towards individual or towards one's family or society or nation or towards universe or even towards God. But duty is compulsory to all. Duty is so it is not only for it is not for only human beings. Even God uh, have to perform their duty. If he skips from duties, others may become lazy. God say that others may follow that model. So, they may not do their duty. So here, they both protagonists become you know become a model for the audience to understand the idea of duty, right? Now, so if this duty is not performed, it may lead to the collapse of the order, and this collapse of order, to somehow not let the order collapse, you know is then therefore in the play we see the intervention through the curse, intervention of the signet, all of these elements, all of these motives that are going to help the playwright restore the balance. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "O Arjuna, I have no compulsion on my duty. Even in the worlds, I am not bound by it. There is nothing more to be to me or something I have not got. Yet I do it as my duty. Otherwise, people will follow the wrong path." So this message is embedded in Indian scriptures and has been concentrated in the work of Kalidasa, as is also seen in this work. So thus duty is inevitable. We should do it carefully until its end to reach the final goal. Our purpose is to bring out the theme that ancient works are relevant due to eternal values they reflect. So this is also the value that has been reflected upon in the play, that is the concept of duty. So through Kalidasa lived in the golden age, though Kalidasa lived in the golden age, he warns us that one should not take it as granted. One must work hard and help the society. While helping society, one must be humble. Now another work that I'm going to refer to understand Act 7 and its one thing is the concept of duty, and to understand this concept of duty better, the work is titled Kalidasa's play Rituals of Human Perfection. So here also we see in a way a perfection through the unification that has been symbolized in Act 7, right? So Shakuntala is illustrating for us the unity of faith, action and fortune, right? Because there is faith, there is action, the interventions, and there is fortune, the prosperity, which leads human beings to perfection and happiness, embodies the ritual of penance, right? The penance that bridges faith, action, and fortune, even in the play Shakuntala. So Shakuntala represents faith, Dushyanta signifies action, and their son Sarvadamana symbolizes fortune. Shakuntala has tremendous confidence in herself and in the virtue of others. Her ardent faith in love and understanding is the main reason for her reunion with Dushyanta. Dushyanta represents the profound spiritual strength which drives a person to righteous action. In Act 6, while he grieves for Shakuntala, he undertakes a war against the demons to comply with Indra's request. He always obeys the law of dharma. Their son Sarvadamana assumes the role of fortune or success because he brings about the reunion of two lovers, that is Shakuntala and Dushyanta. Therefore, this reunion at the conclusion of the play points out at the important philosophy that by having faith in virtue and action according to dharma, happiness can be achieved. Right? So, Shakuntala, Dushyanta, and their son Sarvadamana, that is Emperor Bharata, are signifying faith, action, and fortune. And this is going to be achieved if we are acting according to the dharma and have faith in the virtue of dharma. So Shakuntala's disappearance from the world when rejected by Dushyanta denotes a scapegoat ritual. Shakuntala is shown as a victim of the unknown and mysterious powers which govern the lives of people. She has been used as a scapegoat to personify humanity as a whole, which is subjected to the grand mechanism of the universe. And her disappearance implies her death. Before the end of the play, Dushyanta finds Shakuntala, signifying that she has been resurrected by Dushyanta. Therefore, her disappearance and her reunion with Dushyanta can be regarded as a ritual of death and resurrection. Right? Beyond ritual of death and resurrection, you have to also understand it from this that the place where she is found, the hermitage of Aditi and Maricha, is a place of timelessness. The golden that is there in the hermitage of Maricha and Aditi is not the same gilded golden of the court of Dushyanta. Instead, it is the coming of the strength that is that derives from the righteousness that is complying with the virtues the virtues and faith that is in accordance with the dharma, right? And as is seen, concentrated in the work of Kalidasa, which is of course taking the story from the epic Mahabharata, the Akhyana, right? So even the role played by the fish in recovering Dushyanta is of significance. For his first reincarnation, God Vishnu took the form of a fish to save the world from chaos. In the same way, the fish saves the ring and sacrifices itself to restore Dushyanta's memory. Right. So, Dushyanta's war against the demons. So, a lot of this very element of the fish, of the signet of the ring, takes from a lot of traditions that were already there, right? From the folk tales, from the oral traditions, from the epic tradition. Um, so, Dushyanta's war against the demon in compliance with Indra's request manifests itself as a worship. Even though afflicted by sorrow brought about by separation from Shakuntala, he readily obeys Indra, giving precedence to duty over love, responsibility to divine obligations over personal ends. In all his plays, Kalidasa presents the uh, mortal that man has to do the right action according to dharma. This emphasizes the need of harmonious relationship between the gods and human beings, and this is reaffirmed by Maricha's preaching in the last scene. Gods, with their blessing, should provide happiness for men, and in return, human beings should please the gods by their devotion and right action. The final goal of life, as described in the benediction of the play in Moksha, is moksha. Right? Even in the benediction, it is said that may I be freed from this cycle. So, in demonstrating people's faith and virtuous action to achieve this aim, the play Shakuntala takes the form of ritual enlightening. The fact that both action and faith are necessary to derive happiness in this life, and the fulfillment of life leads to the attainment of eternal bliss. Um Now, this is also important when we are talking about, the play, the last act, that the act is occurring in the realm of celestial being and then moves to the hermitage. After defeating the demons, Dushyanta and Matali are seen on their way back to earth when Dushyanta sees the holy hermitage of sage Maricha and expresses his desire to seek his blessings. At the hermitage, Matali requests an audience with Maricha, and in ensuing wait, Dushyanta comes across a young boy who is playing with a lion cub, right? So after the king becomes successful, Indra showers him with extraordinary honor. And finally, we see that the people are reuniting, the reunion of the family. So this poetic aspect of drama, which appeals to the heart, but every drama has characters in the story and incidents connected with them, which are usually a reflection of society. So, viewed from this social point of view, we perceive that the characterization of Shakuntala over the years was eventually adapted to the image of woman suitable to the ideal of the new middle class in the 19th century. The child of nature was an innocent girl who was led astray but remained submissive, long suffering, patient, and devoted to her husband. Now, this critical reading is taken from the background reading, the background material that is there in your study material. So it is looking at the character of Shakuntala and her depiction throughout the various editions that we have had. In Kalidasa's version, we are in the delicacy and romance of anguish and imminent tragedy, of pathos and finally of happiness. The emotional range is infinite when compared to epic narrative, but in the intermeshing of emotions, the image of Shakuntala undergoes a transformation. Um Kalidasa takes the theme from the epic but fills it out with subplots as a scene, right? Um, so the romantic play as a genre of literature spotlighted the sport of kings hunting and romantic love. The hunt can also be seen as a metaphor of courtly love, pursuit, consenting emotion, and ultimately submission. The play is seen focusing on the tension between karma and dharma, desire and duty, manifest in the relation between the two dominant rasa, Sringara rasa and Veera rasa, the erotic and the heroic, the theory developed by the commentators of the play. Now you may ask, what are these rasas? right? Because we have looked at the themes that are there of the dharma and karma, that is abiding by the virtue and having faith in the in the very the quotes that are given to us, that we have to abide by, right, in the scriptures. This but what are the rasas? What is this rasa that we are constantly referring to? So rasa is basically, as I was saying, rasa is an important part of Natya Shastra that gives us, that was given to us, that is seen as the fifth Veda that talks about the purpose of drama, what is a drama, and studies the classical Sanskrit dramas. So, in this, we have been given we have also been given the theory of rasa, that what are rasas. So there are 8 sentiments, and what are these 8 sentiments? These 8 sentiments have been described as, the Shringara, the Hasya, the Karuna, the Rodra, Veer, Bhayanka, Bhibitsa, and Adbhuta. What is Shringara? The erotic, the love, right? What is Hasya? The comic that is shown to us by, the jester. The Karuna of pathetic, the Rodra of furious, the Veera of heroic, the Bhayanka of terrible, the Bhibitsa of odious, and Adbhuta of marvelous. Now, all these rasas have been used by the playwright Kalidasa. Now, along with rasa, we also have 8 dominant states, that is bhava, and the 3 transitory states, that is vyabhachari bhava, and 8 temperamental state, that is satvika, and the 4 kinds of histrionic representations, that is abhinaya, right, the performance. Now, you may look at the other aspect, what is transitory states, the dominant states, all of it when we are discussing the background material for it. But for now, we will be looking at the sentiments, the rasas that are there in the play, okay, and how they have been presented to us in the play through various characters. So, Bharata explains that the fusion of all this, brings taste to the drama, to the performance. So that is why rasa becomes very important when we are talking about the performative aspect, right, the story, the plot of the play. So as we saw that they have been characterized as Shringara, Hasya, Karuna, Rodra, Veera, Bhayanka, Bhibitsa, Adbhuta. That is erotic, comic, pathetic, furious, heroic, terrible, odious, marvelous. Let's see where they have been used in the play. So the erotic we know has been used in Act 1, the coming together, right? Then in Act 4, when the lovers have to separate, that is of Viraha, right? Now, the next is of comic, that is laughter, that is hasya, right? The consequence are throbbing of the lips, how the transitory states are, the sentiments of comic, self-centered, centered on others, and now it has 6 varieties, and the comic we know has been used, has been used in the play through, has been shown through in the play through the use of, through the character of Vidushaka, of Madhvaya. Now the pathetic is that of sorrow, of lamentation. Now the pathetic is also is shown through the rasa has been shown through the, you can taste it through the condition of Shakuntala, the furious that is shown through through the anger, that is the anger of the king, the anger of the female protagonist, right, the heroic through the king, right, when he goes to fight the battle, the terrible when the curse has been the curse has been given to Shakuntala, right? And the odious, that is of disgust, right? It could be, it is threefold, it is nauseating, it is simple, it is exciting, and this odious has also been, this rasa of disgust is also seen in the play through, is shown in the play through the the disgust that is, the disgust for Shakuntala, that under the influence of the curse that Dushyanta shows for her, right? And the Adbhuta when Misra Kesi, the magical acts, right? When Misra Kesi takes away the Mr. Casey takes or flies away with Shakuntala. The magical acts that are there in the play is the marvelous, is the so all these rasas, all these sentiments provide taste to the play that you are reading right now, right? Um, we see that the last act sees Dushyanta traveling in Indra's airborne chariot and alighting at the ashrama of Maricha. The initial action, interestingly, is not his recognition of Shakuntala but of his son. The tension between Kama and Dharma is resolved in the birth of the son. The son as successor is the requirement of the Dharma of the king, and in this case, it is the fruition of his karma, also of course Kama, because how Kama is understood through the Shringara, that is in the case of Kalidasa is very interesting. It is very interesting because how Shringara he deploys and he uses the element of Shringara, of Sambhoga, of Vipralamba, also takes from the very theory of Kama, the very theory of desire, right? And this is also the sun is the fruition of Kama, the sun is the fruition of, is the requirement of Dharma, it is also fruition of karma, the penance. So the king is irresistibly drawn to his son, whom he later on recognizes. The son is playing with the son is playing with uh, the son is playing with the lion cub. And there is also what is emphasized in the last act is the supernatural intervention which is causing the separation, and again the supernatural intervention which is causing the union. So hence the final scene, that is act 7, is reminding us of the opening scene. It is the duplication, even though indirectly, right, of the first act. So the contrast between the forest and court is generic to the epic, but is emphasized in this particular play more directly than in others by Kalidasa, partly as concession to the poetry being taken from the epic. It could also be because he was romanticizing the ashram and the polarity was sharper. Now the polarity between the green world and the world of the court is also again brought to is again highlighted. Now you may ask, why is it highlighted, right? We were discussing this point earlier in terms of Vidushaka, that is Madhya. We were discussing it with regards to Act 5, the court of the king and the green world, right? The transition from the green world to the world of the court. Then again in Act 7, this just juxtaposition, this contrast becomes even more dominant, right? Because you would see that the union, be it the Sambhoga and be it the union, the final union, it is never happening in in the world of court. It is happening once in the hermitage of Kanava, and later on in the hermitage of Aditi and Maricha, right? This is a very, so to understand this, let us look at a few more works.